Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this special edition of Faith Nation exploring education in America. From the CBN studio in Washington, D.C., I'm John Jessup. Well, homeschooling is the fastest growing form of education in America, with more parents trying to shield their children from classroom culture wars. It's even exploding out in the Pacific Northwest. CBN's David Brody traveled to Vancouver, Washington to see why.
The scenery here in Vancouver, Washington, across the Columbia River from Portland is simply beautiful. A very appropriate setting for what's taking place here.
The whole story is a miracle story, really.
Heidi St. John and husband Jay started their homeschooling venture about 20 years ago. What began as a small, humble homeschool ministry has now outgrown 2 locations thanks to a booming demand.
God just kept putting on our hearts, step forward in faith, and I will bring the people and the resources, and he's done that.
Boy, has he. When COVID hit, so did a rush of parents and their kids to the homeschool center, causing it to almost quadruple in size. A new building was needed to house the demand, but it carried a hefty price tag that only God could meet.
We didn't have $16 million. And so we took it to the Lord. And we at one point, actually several points along the way, we brought families over here to pray for the building. People walking the perimeter of this building, putting their hands on the bricks and just saying, Father, you see what's happening to your children. We need your help. We need your help.
And he showed up in a mighty way, enough money in full so they could move forward debt-free.
Nothing is impossible for God.
And so far, the miracle has led to this. Hundreds of students, close to 200 parent teachers, some who lost their jobs during COVID, a huge auditorium, coffee shop, bookstore, and of course, a couple hundred classrooms with everything from the basics to woodworking to dance. Instead of a regular school, it's more like a newer, bigger model of a homeschool co-op. This is about matching kids' interests with parents' teaching expertise so students can have more light bulb moments. Ultimately, it's about community.
When you're around people that are amongst the same mindset as you, it just, it emboldens you and it makes you just, it validates that I'm not alone.
So why was this homeschool miracle needed in the first place? Well, today's culture, especially in the Pacific Northwest, is the main catalyst, and the students understand what's happening.
The public school system is having a really hard time right now, and they're teaching a lot of things that are not true and things that kids should not be taught.
And the numbers back that up, showing Americans losing faith in public schools. A Gallup poll reveals an all-time low of just 26% of Americans who have a great deal of confidence in them. A separate poll shows that nearly half of parents who homeschool their children believe public school systems are influenced by too much liberal and woke culture viewpoints.
You would never pack your child a sack lunch and send them to the front lines of a literal war. You would never do that. And yet every single day, we give hundreds of thousands of students sack lunches. We pat them on the head and we put them on little yellow school buses and they take them to the front lines of the culture war.
The St. John's know firsthand that the homeschool plunge can be daunting.
I was the mom who was like, what woman in her right mind, right? We want to stay home with their kids for 18 years when a yellow bus come taken away for free, right?
But then they saw the effect on their child at the time, which led to prayer and a conversation.
I'm kind of leaning over him, you know, wake up, wake up. And he woke up. I said, what would you think if we homeschooled our kids? And you remember what you said?
I said, who are you? What have you done with my wife?
All kidding aside, it's a rough road.
It is a hard venture. We're not, we know that it's tough. But everything that has value costs something. And so if it was easy, it probably wouldn't be valuable.
Parents of public school kids definitely have concerns about what their kids are experiencing. So maybe there are other ways to fight the good fight.
They will say, well, look, what if I volunteer at the PTA? What if I run for school board? What if I try to make a difference there in the secular world?
Yes, we do advocate people get in the school board. We do advocate that Christians teach in public school. We just don't see how it's going to be saved.
They hope this model they've created here in the Pacific Northwest will be the way forward across the country.
This does seem like a model that could be modeled around the country in all different places.
Absolutely. We're contacted every week by people asking, how do we do what you're doing?
If God can do it here in the Pacific Northwest, then he can do it anywhere.
For those who want to homeschool and build community, the St. John's are a model for what can happen and how God can work. David Brody, CBN News, in Vancouver, Washington.
Coming up, how some public schools are bringing faith back into the classroom. Welcome back. From gender identity to mental health struggles, students today face all kinds of serious challenges. To help, several states are allowing volunteer chaplains to serve as counselors in public schools. Among them, Florida, where Governor Ron DeSantis signed a measure into law. CBN's Charlene Aaron reports on this growing trend.
After this law takes effect July 1st, the process will begin as volunteer chaplains apply and undergo background checks. Then it will be up to school districts, individual students, and their parents to take part.
No one's being forced to do anything, but to exclude religious groups from campus, that is discrimination. You're basically saying that God has no place. That's wrong.
And it's a great thing. My dad was a preacher. I'm a preacher's kid, and it's great.
More than a dozen states have proposed measures to allow chaplains in public schools.
17 states are involved in chaplain legislation. Just recently, it passed out of both houses of Louisiana. We expect it to be sent to the governor soon. It's happening around the country because it is so needed.
Florida House Speaker Paul Renner believes chaplains can possibly offer alternatives for students, pointing out that guidance counselors in the state had allowed and even encouraged students to transition to the opposite sex without their parents' consent.
They were giving them different clothes to wear, changing their name without ever telling their parents. And if this is the kind of guidance they're getting from guidance counselor, I think it's about time we have a different perspective in the middle of the school that does respect our values.
This push for chaplains comes as mental health issues among students are growing and schools face a shortage of counselors. According to the American School Counselor Association, the disparity for the 2022-2023 school year came in at a ratio of 385 students to one counselor. The recommended number is 250 to 1. Rocky Malloy leads the National School Chaplains Association.
I got news of 2 children that committed suicide. One was in 8th grade, one was in 10th grade. And it's schools that did not have chaplains. The chaplain's role is to prevent that type of calamity from happening.
In 2023, Texas became the first state to allow school chaplains to help counter a decrease in qualified mental health professionals and growing teacher burnout.
The idea that our teachers now are experiencing high levels of trauma and PTSD, that is something new that's happening in education, and our teachers need support. Chaplains are great to help our teachers through this.
Texas Board of Education member Julie Pickren says chaplains have also resulted in making schools safer.
A chaplain in Texas was key in one of our school districts at noticing what was happening with the students and what was going on with these young girls, and brought it to light to the sheriff and was instrumental in identifying this human trafficking ring in a school district in Texas.
Critics, however, claim chaplains could do more harm than good. One concern being their only requirement is passing a background check, and that schools notate a chaplain's religious affiliation. The American Civil Liberties Union of Florida stating, public schools are not Sunday schools and chaplains are not school counselors. Allowing chaplains to assume official positions, whether paid or voluntary, in public schools as counselors or other support staff will undermine this right by creating an environment ripe for evangelizing and religious coercion of students in violation of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. A claim Renner disputes.
The Constitution prohibits the establishment of a religion, for example, forcing us all to be Catholic or Baptist. It does not in any way, shape, or form, despite a lot of effort to say otherwise, prohibit the free exercise of religion. And so the left has done a good job of trying to get Christians out of the public life altogether.
Meanwhile, in Oklahoma, the Satanic Temple is seeking to take advantage of this movement, threatening to deploy its ministers into schools if the state approves a measure allowing chaplains. That's something the state's education chief, Ryan Walters, strongly opposes, saying Satanists are not welcome in Oklahoma's schools.
60 years ago, they said they did something. They said, we don't need God or spirituality in school. Look where it took us to today. God is back. The chaplain is the perfect person. They're the spiritual source of a school.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Thank you, Charlene. Experts agree young people across America are in a mental health crisis. Some point the finger at cell phones and social media. In response, more and more states are trying to get these addicted devices out of children's hands during school hours. CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson reports on this national move that's gaining momentum.
Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin ordered public schools across the state to go cell phone free by January to promote a healthier and more focused educational environment. One national study found 97% of kids used their cell phones during school hours. Another revealed nearly 3/4 of high school teachers believe phones are a major distraction after seeing students watch Netflix, gambling online, and glued to social media.
So giving kids access to something where they can have 24/7 interaction with their peers is kind of the worst thing we want to do, especially if it's distracting them from schoolwork.
Experts point out kids' brains don't fully develop until their 20s.
Based on the science, we know that there's no such thing as multitasking. We all engage in task shifting. So having a phone in the class requires a lot of task shifting, which kids are not able to do as well as adults.
Last year, Florida became the first state to ban cell phones at school. Indiana and Ohio passed similar legislation. Oklahoma, Vermont, Kansas, Utah, and New York may follow suit.
We know that we've already lost too many kids, or kids that are spiraling for a long time now.
Some schools are divided over whether kids should surrender their phones only during class but have them in between classes, at lunch, and during other free times, or whether they should give up their phone the entire day. In that instance, some parents worry about being unable to contact their child, a concern others downplay.
When we were growing up, our parents didn't have constant access to us.
Even in the worst-case scenario of a school shooting, some experts say it's better for kids to be without their phones.
Constant notifications and dings that are coming through from family trying to check on their student might alert the assailant to where they are, and also it jams emergency signals.
So while many believe smartphones should be removed from the classroom, not everyone agrees on the best way to do that. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
From studying the Bible to taking on textbooks, up next, how churches in Florida are picking up the responsibility of teaching Black history. The plight of African Americans is a difficult yet unescapable part of American history. But the interpretation of that history is now under fire in states like Florida. Schools there have scaled back what they're teaching, but as Hillary Powell reports, that's leading some churches to step in to educate.
Female faith leaders tell me they're on the front lines of instruction, stepping in to fill a need, teaching Black history at churches, right alongside Bible study.
I vividly remember what happened to me when I tried to integrate a public school system. I mean, I was spit on, I was called the N-word every day, I was beaten, and those things happened not hundreds of years ago. I'm talking 1965.
75-year-old Dr. LaVon Bracey's memories of being part of integrating the Alachua County, Florida school system are a painful yet indelible part of her past.
It's uncomfortable, but it happened. And we need to actually talk about it.
Now she's once again breaking barriers, teaching African American history inside churches with a growing demand. That's in response to the Florida Board of Education approving new guidelines in 2023 for its kindergarten through 12th grade African American history curriculum. The required changes came about following a 2022 law Governor Ron DeSantis dubbed Stop Wrongs to Our Kids and Employees Act, or the Stop Woke Act. One part of the curriculum drew widespread attention for stating, Quote, instruction includes how slaves developed skills, which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. Before going to Washington in 2011, Florida Congresswoman Frederica Wilson served as an elementary school principal who helped urge the state legislature to pass a 1994 law mandating Black history be taught statewide. A founding member of the Florida African American History Task Force, she calls the new guidelines an alarming departure from educational standards. In a statement to CBN, she says, quote, we cannot afford to whitewash history and deny future generations the knowledge needed to build a more just and equitable society. Adding, I fully support what our churches are doing to preserve that history.
So I took it personal. We also realized that history still sits in our pews in the Black church.
Reverend Rhonda Thomas leads the organization Faith in Florida, which created the History Toolkit for churches that's taken off. Nearly 400 houses of worship, including Protestant, Catholic, and mosques across 29 states, are teaching Black history using the toolkit. Haters have also taken note. Thomas tells CBN News she's received death threats.
It did not detour us, but it did empower us.
Because she sees history being on her side. Even before slavery ended, some churches in the North doubled as schoolhouses for freed Black people. After emancipation, many churches opened their doors to educate former slaves, helping boost Southern Black literacy from 5% in 1870 to about 70% in 1900. Ministers like Orlando pastor Sharon Riley see the present work as preserving that history. She hopes the lessons taught to her young parishioners will get them energized to vote.
We wanted to be sure that our students understood, especially on that high school level, that they understood everything that went into giving us the right to vote. It's also instilling in them a sense of responsibility as citizens in our country.
Reverend Thomas adds that while the past can't be rewritten, it can shape the future by using history to soften hardened hearts.
In fact, in some of our churches, they teach it, the Black history class is larger than the Sunday school class. So it's reaching the unchurched.
While these new guidelines aren't being used in the classroom yet, that's expected to begin this fall. We contacted the Florida Department of Education to ask how teachers are being instructed on implementing them and whether they have leeway to use other material, such as content created by the Commissioner of Education's African American History Task Force. The department did not respond. In Washington, Hillary Powell, CBN News.
A teen fights for the right to learn about intelligent design. See how he took on the state and won when Faith Nation returns. And finally tonight, for years, teachers have been limited in educating students on how the universe came about. The idea of intelligent design is often banned, considered taboo due to its biblical ties. But one West Virginia high school student believes that's unfair, so much so that he drafted a bill to allow West Virginia teachers to cover so-called scientific theory, including intelligent design. CBN's Wendy Griffith introduces us to the teen who took on the creation debate and won.
2 years ago, 16-year-old West Virginia high school student Hayden Hodge decided to help his teachers increase the scientific theories they could include in lessons on how the world came to be. While Big Bang and evolution made the list, the theory that perhaps God created all of this, the universe and humanity supernaturally, did not.
So I think a lot of it was fear. They were just afraid of if a student asked a question like that and they answered it truthfully, then they were afraid of, anything that could happen to them with their jobs or in their personal life or anything like that. And, like I said, with that science teacher, he was afraid to even, have conversations like that. And I thought this needs to change. He needs to feel like he can talk about this without any fear of losing his job.
With the help of his father, Tony, and some West Virginia lawmakers, Hayden drafted a bill that would allow teachers to include discussion of intelligent design.
Hayden he spearheaded this himself. I mean, he came to me and asked for my advice. Dad, how can we do this or whatever? And I just kind of gave him a little bit of advice. I said, but if you want to do it, you need to be the one to head it up. And so he sat down and did research, and he ended up working on the language himself. And talked to the senator that represents our district and went to her, she happens to be the chair of the education committee, Senator Amy Grady. He took it to her, and from there, the ball just kept rolling, and we're really proud of him and all of his efforts.
Due to political pushback, they agreed to take the phrase intelligent design out of the bill, although it still allows West Virginia public school teachers to discuss it in the classroom.
A majority of the members present having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed.
Some senators saw it as the easiest vote they cast all year.
You have to understand, in West Virginia, this is a God-fearing state. The people here love the Lord, they love God, they love Jesus. And when people have things like this presented before them, they put God first in their lives. And the same goes for our legislators in this building behind me.
Governor Jim Justice, an outspoken Christian, signed it into law in March.
Anyone that denies God's presence is just not looking and just absolutely not with it. And so for our teachers to be able to teach the foundation of all of our lives, well, why wouldn't they teach it? We can teach about evolution or teach Big Bang or whatever it may be. The reason would only tell you, well, of course we've got to teach intelligent design. We're blessed to have a wonderful young man that brought it to our attention.
Hayden vividly remembers the day it passed the Senate.
It felt fantastic. I remember being up in the gallery, and the second that it passed overwhelmingly, I got super excited. I remember giving my dad a high five, and that was just one of the coolest things ever. I looked over at my mom, and she was kind of smiling and kind of crying at the same time, so it was really fun.
While Mississippi, Louisiana, and Tennessee have similar legislation, Governor Justice hopes West Virginia's version will help encourage other states to follow suit.
If we're the first in West Virginia to do this, it'll spread all across the land. You wait and see.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News, Charleston, West Virginia.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this edition of Faith Nation. Have a great night.